Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're diving into something, well, let's be honest, it's something we all kind of think about as we get a little older. Blood pressure.
It's definitely a hot topic.
And we got a great Medium article sent in from Jessica. Understanding blood pressure. What your numbers really mean. A guide for older adults. And I think it's a question we all have, right? What do those numbers really mean?
Yeah. A lot of folks see those two numbers, the systolic, the diastolic, but they don't always connect them to what's actually happening in the body.
I'll admit I'm one of those folks.
Yeah.
Just numbers the doc wants to see go down, right? But this article uses this garden hose analogy I thought was pretty helpful. The systolic, that top number, that's like that initial burst of water when you first turn the hose on, right?
Exactly. That's the pressure when your heart's contracting, pushing the blood out. Strong force.
Okay, so then the bottom number, diastolic, that's...
Think of the hose again. Water's flowing, but you're not squeezing the nozzle anymore. That's steady pressure.
Ah, okay. So let me throw a number at you. Say my reading's 135/85. At that very moment, what's going on inside?
So that 135, your systolic, tells us your heart's working pretty hard during each contraction, pushing against those artery walls. And that 85, the diastolic, even when your heart's relaxing between beats, still a good amount of pressure in those arteries.
The article mentions some guidelines. For us over 60 folks, below 120/80 is ideal, then 120 to 129 over 80 is elevated, and 130/80 or higher is high. So I guess my 135/85, not exactly winning any awards there.
Right, you're in that higher range. But it's key to remember those are just averages, starting points. Your ideal blood pressure, it's like a fingerprint, depends on you, your health history, other conditions, all that.
Makes sense. So working with your doc is key. Figure out your own personal target.
Absolutely. One size fits all doesn't work here.
Now, the article also talked about how, well, as we age, our blood vessels, they're not as springy as they used to be. Almost like that garden hose that's been left out in the sun too long, stiff. Is that just like inevitable?
It's true. As we age, those blood vessels, they lose some of their elasticity. It's called arterial stiffening. And yeah, it's a big reason why blood pressure tends to creep up as we get older. Gradual process, though, we can't totally stop it, but we can definitely do things to slow it down.
Okay, so slowing it down is the goal. Got it. But at what point does this stiffening, like when does it go from being normal aging to a real problem?
Imagine you're trying to force the same amount of water through a narrower, stiffer pipe. What happens?
I'm guessing the pressure goes way up.
Exactly. Same thing in your arteries. They stiffen up. Heart has to work harder to pump the blood through, puts a strain on the whole system.
So it's like this domino effect, right? Heart works harder, more wear and tear.
Yeah.
And that increases the risk of what exactly?
Well, the list is pretty long and not exactly fun to talk about. Higher risk of heart attack, stroke, heart failure. You can even have kidney problems, vision problems.
Oh, wow.
That's why they call high blood pressure the silent killer. You might not feel anything, but inside, damage is happening.
Okay, that paints a pretty clear picture of why managing this is so important, especially as we get older. So where do we even start? What's the first step to getting a handle on all this?
Well, there's lots of effective ways to manage it, reduce your risk. Luckily, some are lifestyle changes, some might need medication, but whatever the approach, it all starts with awareness.
Awareness.
Yeah.
And I guess taking action, right? Not just knowing about it, but doing something about it.
You got it. Knowledge is power, especially when it comes to your health.
Well, on that note, let's talk about those action steps. What are some of the things we can actually do to get our blood pressure where it needs to be?
There's a few key areas we can dive into. Getting active, making some tweaks to your diet, and learning how to manage that stress.
Sounds like we've got a lot to unpack. Looking forward to diving into those lifestyle changes in the part 2 of this deep dive. See y'all back here soon. All right, we're back, ready to tackle those lifestyle changes, the things we can actually do to help manage blood pressure. You mentioned physical activity, diet, and stress management. Let's get right to it. Where should we start?
Well, let's start with movement. Might seem counterintuitive, but getting your heart rate up can actually help lower blood pressure in the long run.
So, not talking about running a marathon here, right? What kind of exercise are we thinking about?
You'd be surprised, even moderate activity can make a difference. Jessica mentioned walking, swimming, even gardening in the article. The key is consistency. Aim for at least 30 minutes most days a week, something you can keep up.
Yeah, I like how she emphasized finding something you enjoy. It doesn't have to be a hardcore gym session. Right?
Yeah, exactly. If you like dancing or hiking or biking, that all counts. It's about moving your body and having fun while you're doing it.
Makes sense. Make it sustainable. Something you'll actually stick with.
Yeah.
Okay, what about diet? I know sodium is a big one when it comes to blood pressure.
It definitely plays a role. Too much sodium can really mess with your blood pressure. Think about it like this. When you've got excess sodium in your bloodstream, your body holds on to water to try to dilute it. That increases the volume of your blood, more pressure on your blood vessels.
Ah, okay, makes sense. So cutting back on salt is key. Jessica had some good tips. Using herbs and spices, choosing low-sodium options, even rinsing canned veggies.
All great strategies. Here's one she didn't mention, though. Potassium. Potassium actually helps your body flush out that excess sodium.
Oh, interesting. So loading up on things like bananas, sweet potatoes, leafy greens could actually make a difference.
Exactly. It's all about balance. More potassium, less sodium. It can really move the needle on your blood pressure.
All right, let's talk about stress. We touched on it earlier, but how does stress actually, physically affect blood pressure?
Well, when you're stressed, your body releases hormones, adrenaline, cortisol, the whole 9 yards. Those trigger a bunch of changes. Heart rate goes up, blood vessels constrict, and your blood pressure increases. It's that fight or flight response kicking into gear.
So short bursts of stress, probably not a big deal, but it's that chronic, ongoing stress we got to watch out for.
Right. If you're constantly stressed, your body's basically on high alert all the time. Like driving with your foot on the gas pedal nonstop, eventually something's going to give.
Makes sense. The article mentioned some relaxation techniques, deep breathing, listening to music, but I'm guessing there's lots of other ways to manage stress, right? What works for you?
It's really personal, finding what helps you unwind. Some people find being in nature is calming, others like meditation, yoga, some folks get creative, painting, writing, that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's about tuning in to what brings you that sense of calm, making it a part of your routine.
Absolutely. And sometimes it's as simple as just disconnecting for a few minutes, put the phone down, step away from all the demands, just be present. Even those little moments can make a big difference.
We've talked about exercise, diet, stress management. Anything else we should be thinking about in terms of lifestyle changes?
Oh, there's one big one we haven't touched on yet. Sleep.
Sleep. Knew you were going to say that. Have to admit, I'm not always the best at getting enough. So how does lack of sleep actually affect blood pressure?
When you're sleep deprived, your body, it pumps out more of those stress hormones we talked about, leads to higher blood pressure. And if you're not sleeping well consistently, it can really increase your risk of developing hypertension long term.
So it's not just about feeling tired, it's a genuine health concern.
It is, definitely. Most adults, we need 7 to 8 hours of good quality sleep to function at our best. Keep that blood pressure in check.
Okay, any tips for getting better sleep?
Consistency is key here too. Try to go to bed and wake up around the same time each day, even on weekends, helps regulate your body's natural rhythm.
What about those nights when you just can't seem to fall asleep?
A relaxing bedtime routine can be helpful. Warm bath, reading, calming music, anything to signal to your body it's time to wind down.
And I've heard cutting back on caffeine and alcohol before bed is important.
Yeah, they can definitely interfere with sleep quality. Also, make sure your bedroom is dark, quiet, cool, really create that sleep-conducive environment.
What if you're doing all the right things, but still tossing and turning all night?
If it's a regular problem, definitely worth talking to your doctor. Could be an underlying sleep disorder, like sleep apnea, that needs to be addressed.
Good point. Always best to rule out any medical conditions that might be contributing. Okay, well, we've covered a lot of ground here. Medication, monitoring, physical activity, diet, stress, sleep. It's a lot to juggle.
It might feel overwhelming at first, but the good news is even small changes in these areas can have a big impact.
And it's not about being perfect, right? It's about progress, not perfection.
Exactly. It's a journey, not a destination. Every step you take towards a healthier lifestyle, it's a step in the right direction.
So, as we wrap up part 2 here, what's the key takeaway you want folks to walk away with?
I'd say this. You have more control over your blood pressure than you might think. By understanding what influences it and making conscious choices, you can really take charge of your heart health, live a longer, healthier life.
Well said. We'll be back with part 3 after a short break to wrap things up and share some final thoughts from Jessica's article. And we're back for the final part of our deep dive into blood pressure. You know, as we've been talking about all these lifestyle changes, it really strikes me how much it's all connected. It's not just individual actions, but a whole approach to well-being, right?
Oh, absolutely. Jessica's article really hit on that. Managing blood pressure is not just about lowering the numbers. It's about a whole lifestyle shift for both your physical and mental health.
And one thing that stuck with me was that idea of personalized care. We can't just follow generic advice. What works for one person might not work for another.
Exactly. And that's where having that open, honest conversation with your doctor comes in. They can help figure out the best plan for you based on your own situation, medical history, all that.
Speaking of individual needs, Jessica's article focused on older adults. Are there any specific things to keep in mind for that age group that we haven't touched on yet?
Well, as we age, our bodies tend to become more sensitive to changes in blood pressure. Those fluctuations, even small ones, can have a bigger impact on our health.
So even more important to be diligent about monitoring those numbers and making healthy choices.
Exactly. And it's important to be aware that certain medications, ones that are commonly prescribed to older adults, can interact with blood pressure medication.
Oh, good point. Always good to keep your doctor updated on all the medications you're taking, even over-the-counter stuff.
Absolutely. Transparency is key.
You know, as we've been going through all these tips and advice, it made me think about the mental side of things. Managing blood pressure, sometimes it can feel overwhelming, like you're constantly battling those numbers.
It's understandable to feel that way, but I think it's important to shift our perspective a bit. Instead of seeing it as this burden, let's look at it as an opportunity, a chance to take control of our health.
I like that. It's about empowerment, not defeat.
Exactly. Every healthy choice we make, whether it's choosing the salad instead of the fries or taking 5 minutes to just breathe, it's a win, a step towards a healthier, happier you.
And it's not about being perfect, right? It's about progress, not perfection.
Absolutely. We all have those days when we slip up or feel discouraged, but it's about acknowledging those setbacks, learning from them, and moving forward.
One thing Jessica's article didn't specifically mention, but I was thinking, social connection, that probably plays a role too, right?
Oh, huge role. Strong social connections have actually been linked to lower blood pressure and better heart health overall.
Makes sense. When you feel supported and loved, you're less likely to be chronically stressed. And we know stress is a big factor here.
Exactly. Nurturing those relationships with friends, family, our community, it's good for the soul, ain't the heart.
So it all comes full circle, doesn't it? Managing blood pressure, it's a journey that involves physical, mental, and social well-being.
It's a great reminder that our health is precious, something to truly cherish and protect.
Well said. As we wrap up this deep dive, what's the final thought you want to leave our listeners with?
I'd say look at this newfound knowledge not as something to worry about, but as a way to empower yourself. You now understand how blood pressure works, what affects it, and what you can do about it.
It's about taking charge of your health, making informed choices that support your well-being.
And remember, you're not in this alone. Your doctor's there to help, you've got your support system, and we're all in this together.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into blood pressure. We hope you found it helpful and maybe even inspiring.
Here's to a healthier, happier you.
Until next time, keep learning, keep exploring, and keep taking care of yourselves.